All right, everybody, it's time to once again comment on some CBR articles, which is actually kind of fun. I don't really mind doing it, but this one actually comes from a subscriber, Crazy and 20. He suggested that I do this, and it sounded kind of fun to me, so I figured, why not? What the hell? Let's just jump right into it and just like rip our pants off and just dive. Well, let's save that till the end. I'm seeing Wyald on the screen, so I just keep thinking of like horribly traumatic things, and top 10 cruelest Berserk characters. So Berserk is obviously a manga that takes place in a world that is very dark, chaotic, barbaric, and there is a lot of cruelty abound, not just with the horrible apostle monster creatures, but also just with humanity in itself, and also sort of is that allegory of the world is harsh, cruel, painful, unfair, uncertain, and all that, and yet we find a way to continue struggling forward, to continue fighting against it, and continuing to say F you to the fates around us that want us doomed. And that's sort of one of the most motivational things about Berserk to me. Now, when you go to top 10 cruelest Berserk characters, in my mind, there are a few that kind of spark up just immediately. Wyald is definitely one of them. Wyald, I would say, is probably, he better be very high on this list, because Wyald is a character that is, number one, the ultimate edgelord of all time, but also, he just, the way that he goes about doing the horrible atrocities that he does and the pure glee that he gets in it. And yes, we do see glee in apostles when they, when they're eating human beings or attacking, people or within battle and stuff like that. But Wyald specifically has the attitude of, let's make it fun. Let's make it stimulating. He's just so overcompensating for probably what was his wasted life. Because we see Wyald was actually like an old human man upon his death, so he was probably somebody that spent his whole life, never learned how to fight, never got down with any women, never did anything exciting, never made a name for himself, basically just was this weak, complacent guy his entire life. So when he became an apostle, he went ham, doubled down, tripled down into doing all of these things and did pretty much the grossest, most horrific stuff pretty much throughout the manga. Now, I'm assuming this is not including characters like the trolls and stuff, because they're not, trolls are more like animals, I guess, in my mind. Like, they're beasts, they're not really like a thinking, feeling apostle, like something with actual agency over its own thoughts and can decide to do, well, there's varying degrees of intelligence, but whatever. Let's get to it. Let's see what they have on their list and see what we have here. Also, I would put Gambino pretty high as well, just from everything that he did to Guts and the way that he treated him. But let's see. So at their number 10, they have Rosine. Okay, before she became an apostle, Rosine was an innocent girl, blah, blah, blah. Rosine believed that adults were inherently evil, and she chose to save their children. To do so, she abducted kids, turned them into pseudo-apostles, that they would play grown-up, which meant inflicting violence on each other. Meant a little bit more than that, but, we'll keep it PC for CBR. As cruel as Rosine was, it was hard not to feel bad for the tragic villain. Yeah, I mean, Rosine herself, I guess you could say that she would be on here just to the very fact that she's mostly interacting with children and that she's abducting them against their will, taking them away from their parents, making her creatures eat people alive. A lot of horrific things are happening here that would be considered cruel, especially with the way that she tosses away, her kind of fake pseudo-apostles and just creates more and sort of has that attitude to just create more. So I'm not really too, I'm fine with her on the list, but in my mind, I feel like there's a lot worse, horrible Berserk characters that you could put over Rosine, but Rosine gets a lot of screen time, so, I mean, I guess it makes sense. At their number 9 is Wyald. They have Wyald at number 9. At number 9? There's 8 more characters you think are more cruel than Wyald? I don't know, man. I'm trying to think, that we actually get to see and experience their character. I would say worse than Wyald, as far as cruelty goes. I don't think there is one. I mean, you could say, you could obviously say Griffith Femto, right? Because of what he did, the Eclipse, and the amount of, the Band of the Hawk, how many of them were just mindlessly slaughtered, and, everything that happened with Casca and whatnot. which, yeah, he would definitely be up there. I wouldn't fault you for putting him above Wyald. Thing is, like, it depends on how you want to view it, right? Because what Griffith did was very personal. And so it's a very horrendous moment that has very personal connotations, which is horrible and cruel, right? Especially to people that were your friends and colleagues, essentially, your soldiers, right? So I can understand him being above Wyald. But you could also look at Wyald and see what he does, which is very similar to what Griffith did, but on a larger scale and to people that he doesn't even know or give a shit about. He's just doing that and then murdering them. So in my mind, I feel like Wyald is worse just because he gives no discretion about who he kills. It's just like an innocent girl and her family at some cottage somewhere that he rolls by and then assaults her, murders her, puts her on a pike. Like, it's just like, you had no reason to do this, you know? And I'm not saying that Griffith, you know, had a reason to do what he had a reason, a horrible reason. You know what I'm saying? Someone's going to take that the wrong way. But you know what I'm saying? So I would put Wyald probably number one personally, but all right, let's see what they have to say. Wyald is recognized the most monstrous apostle, together with his equally sadistic henchmen, yada yada, Wyald's reign of terror. So they're not really describing why they're putting Wyald at 9. They're just putting him. They give a summary of his character, but they're not really describing why he's at 9. Is this like a list of like worst to most? Hold on, I didn't even read the beginning description. Berserk is known for blah, 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 blah. I don't know if this is meant to be like 10 to 1 as in least cruel to most cruel, but if that's the case, they fucked up by putting Wyald at 9. At their number 8, they have Ganishka. So Ganishka is a cruel bastard, and he's definitely a very selfish one, and he'll do anything he can to remain, you know, in his position of power. But we don't really get to see too much of how Ganishka treats his kingdom, right, or his followers or his soldiers. And actually, a lot of the cruelty from Ganishka, the only time we get to see that really is, you know, when he feels like he's at the end of his rope and he goes into the Daka machine and creates himself into Shiva the Destroyer, and, you know, just steps on his entire kingdom or whatnot and just like starts destroying them and, you know, seeing them as ants. But then he's not really like consciously doing it. He's kind of like seeing them as like little tiny ants that are down below him. Doesn't really have a full concept of who he is. You know, he's kind of in that weird dreamlike state. He's like, where am I? What's going on? What is happening? He's sort of like, his mind sort of broke in that transformation. So, you know, it's not like he's purposely trying to step on his followers. And he raised a pretty strong and powerful army that took over a lot of the world. So you probably do have to have a pretty harsh aspect of cruelty in order to do that. But I wouldn't put him above Wyald. At number 7, Moses. Yeah, Moses, absolutely. I still wouldn't put him above Wyald, but I would put Moses pretty high on the list. And the fact that Moses doesn't truly believe that he's doing anything wrong. So he's kind of the opposite of Wyald, because Wyald's just embracing in his evil, whereas Moses is more like, this is for God. Everything I do is for God. Yes, the punishments are harsh, but if you truly believe, you will be saved upon your death. Or if you are truly one with God, you know, this will all make sense in the end. Like, he constantly justifies extremely horrible actions to make himself feel holy and pure and a good follower of God and stuff like that, which is terrifying. It's way more scary. In a way, Moses is way more scary than Wyald, because if you are a person that actually believes you're doing good while putting people in like insanely harmful situations, and also the fact that he's human, you know, makes it even scarier. It's like you can't even, I mean, obviously you probably wouldn't be able to reason with an apostle, but you can't even reason with this human being that at their number 6, King of Midland. Again, not over Wyald, man. I wouldn't put King of Midland over Moses either, like, because like there's that moment with Charlotte, absolutely horrible, right? Like, worst, like I put him number 1 on my top 10 like worst fathers in Berserk. I put him above Gambino for that, because that's your child, that's your kin, that's your actual bloodline. Like, that's horrendous, right? Horribly cruel. but I don't think he's crueler than Ganishka, Moses, or Wyald in the grand scheme of like who he was as a character, because that was a moment where he like broke. That was his breaking point, and he kind of descended into madness within that one particular act, and Charlotte was able to defend herself and escape him, whereas Wyald does what he does, Moses does what he does, all, you know, they succeed in what they're trying to do. So I wouldn't put the Midland King above either of them. Gambino at number 5, okay, I would put Gambino high, mostly because, you know, again, similar thing as the King of Midland, but Gambino was not at any point, you know, righteous in what he was doing, or being a good leader, or being a good role model, or, you know, providing them with a life of luxury in any way. He was completely abusive verbally and physically to Guts the entire time. Hated Guts, blamed him for the death of Shisu, and then, of course, obviously sold him out to Donovan, which is why, I mean, you're supposed to be this person's caretaker and father, and to do that was, that's pretty damn cruel. Number 4, the Beast of Darkness was Guts' dark side. Bro, you can't put the Beast of Darkness as a character in top 10 cruelest characters. Like, the Beast of Darkness it's like a manifestation of Guts' trauma, his rage, everything brutal about him, everything brought upon by his horrible life circumstances, everything that makes him want to just say fuck it and just go like hardcore, just absolute killing mode, screw everything else. It's the thing that's going to lead him to his death eventually, but to like cut out everything human about him, right? Everything that grounds him. It's an aspect of his personality. It's an aspect of who he is as a character. So you can't say the Beast of Darkness itself. You'd have to say Guts. You'd have to say Guts, which Guts probably should be on the 10 cruelest characters list based upon his Black Swordsman era, but he would be number 10, you know what I mean? And, you know, because if you're saying cruelty, he was cruel towards mostly apostles, but he was like telling girls to go kill themselves and stuff, so that's pretty bad. He was pretty abusive to Puck as well. But yeah, I don't think you can separate the Beast of Darkness. That don't make sense to me, because I feel like that's a cop-out, in my opinion, like choosing the Beast of Darkness, because it's not a separate entity from Guts. It's Guts' own psyche. It's that dark voice in the back of your head that when you're walking by somebody in a motorized cart at Walmart that you want to push him over. That's what the Beast of Darkness is. At least for me. Number 3, Guts lost his humanity. So you put Guts twice. You put Guts at number 3, and you put Beast of Darkness at number 4. So, like, it's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. And by the way, I was talking about people that don't need to be using the cart, not, like, old people or disabled people, by the way. Disclaimer. So Guts was pretty cruel as the Black Swordsman, absolutely. He was very, he'd put children in danger. He almost killed Jill. Very abusive and standoffish, doing it as a measure to protect himself and to keep him separated from people. But not as cruel as Wyald, not as cruel as Moses, not as cruel as Gambino, and shouldn't really be this high on the list. Number 2, Griffith. Yeah, okay, Griffith, Femto. I understand this completely. Even though I personally would put Wyald above Griffith, I completely 100% understand Griffith being super high on the list, and he's also the character that we get to know the most, pretty much. So we have more of an understanding of Griffith than we do a lot of the other characters. So that makes sense. So who they got as number 1? Let's see. I'm gonna assume, because who haven't we had? You know who actually should be on this list? Real talk, is the Torturer. The Torturer from Midland, because that dude, that little like creepy Danny DeVito looking motherfucker, he actually legitimately enjoys torturing, and he's not just doing it because the king told him to. Like, he loves doing it. He had Griffith's like tongue cut off, and he's all like licking it and shit. That guy, like, you legitimately cannot be a torturer as a profession if you are not a cruel fucker, you know? Like, you have to be cruel in order to do that. So maybe the Torturer is number 1. Let's see who's number 1. Okay, the God Hand. The God Hand. I mean, sure, I guess. I don't know, like, if you're just talking pure, unadulterated cruelty, I guess you can assume because they are the God Hand and they enact the will of evil, like, that they're very cruel beings and they hold these ceremonies and stuff. So if it not, I get it. Like, I understand. But at the same time, like, we haven't really seen them do... I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, they're the ones that brand people, but they're acting based on other people's desire. Like, it's the people that choose the sacrifice, and then Void sends out the brand. So they're just, like, doing what they do naturally. It's not sort of like a... I don't know. It's not like a I am going to purposely go to you and torture you and do horrible things to you. I don't know. I mean, I feel like, again, the God Hand as number one is kind of a cop-out, but that's just me. I would probably put the Torturer at number one now that I thought about it, because that guy's fucked up. I'd put Torturer at number one, Wyald at number two, Gambino at number three, and Griffith number four, or Griffith number three, Gambino number four, and then I don't know after that. So, I mean, it's not a horrible list. It wasn't as atrocious as I was thinking it was going to be, but, like, your ordering here is just, like, not... I don't like that you used Beast of Darkness as a character, because there's a lot more characters in Berserk that are cruel that you could have used. You could have used the Snake Baron. He was, like, literally eating children. You could have used the Count. You could have used a lot of cruel characters above just using Guts twice. And I wouldn't put the God Hand number one. But anyways, what do you guys think of my list, or that list, and my commentation on it? Let me know what you think down below. And if you have other ideas for videos that you want me to respond to, put that in the comments as well. Like the video, subscribe if you want to stick around and see more. Trying to reach 100K this year, to which I will have my own sacrifice. I mean, my own pizza party. And you're all invited. So other than that, guys, hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.